Gallant comrades in Uganda, my name is Hilary Innocent Taylor Seguier, based here in the US. Now, today finally the World Report 2020 from the Human Rights Watch has been released. This is a powerful report that talks about the human rights violations in the entire world, including Uganda. So I encourage all the Ugandans to go through this report. Simply go to www.hrw.org and have access to this report. So Uganda will be found on page 591 if you go to the table of contents. So Human Rights Watch has been putting together all the evil deeds that have been done by this regime of Mr. Museveni. And this is also a lesson to those who are abusing our rights back home in Uganda, that whatever you do in this generation, whether in the darkness or in broad daylight, will be documented, and perpetrators will be brought to books of justice. So under freedom of expression, the report of course talks about how the regime of despot Kaguta Museveni imposed new regulations on bloggers and website owners. The aim was to limit the freedom of speech. The report says that last year, the government of Museveni censored media outlets. Despot Museveni detained government critics. They gave an example of Joseph Kabuleta, who was detained for simply calling dictator Museveni a liar, a gambler, and a thief. The report talks about the UCC directive that was sent to 13 radio and TV stations to suspend their staff for simply talking about Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, or Bobi Wine, who's giving sleepless nights to despot Kaguta Museveni. Further, the report talks about the arrest of Dr. Stella Nyanzi. She's an activist who has been in jail for over 18 months. She's in jail because of her poem that referred to the president of Uganda as a pair of buttocks. Now, when we go to freedom of assembly, the report talks about 2019 April, whereby Bobi Wine was arrested for leading a social media tax protest, which occurred in July 2018. Still, the report indicates that Bobi Wine faced treason charges because of what happened in 2018 August with Arua incident, where Bobi Wine survived this regime's assassination. Unfortunately, his driver was assassinated. Nobody should be assassinated. Not Bobi Wine, not any Ugandan, and not even Yasin Kauma. Rest in peace, comrade Yasin Kauma. The report is talking about how Uganda police used the Public Order Management Act to restrict peaceful assemblies and demonstrations by opposition groups. This is getting bad. As Ugandans, we cannot just sit down. Everything is getting documented in this generation. The report also talks about what happened last year in October, where Uganda police and military forces cracked down on student protests at Makerere University. They beat up our young brothers and sisters. They tear gassed them. Some were sleeping in their hostels. They beat up badly students with disabilities. They are reminding us the regime of dictator Idi Amin Dada. There's no difference between Museveni and Idi Amin Dada. Now, this report is talking about also electoral reforms. And here they highlight what happened last year in July, where the Attorney General of Uganda tabled proposals to bar candidates from running as independents, from forming alliances with political parties. All this was done in bad faith because they have a young Turk who is fighting against Museveni's dictatorship. Bobi Wine is giving dictator Kaguta Museveni sleepless nights and nightmares. The report further talks about lack of accountability for torture and killings. And here they're talking about the safe houses that are run by the security officers under this regime of Mr. Museveni. They are using safe houses to torture Ugandans. For instance, they talk about the Internal Security Organization, ISO, which illegally detains and tortures Ugandans day and night. You know what happens with the head of ISO? Kaka. Every Ugandan is now crying of Kaka, the head of ISO. But the time will come and Kaka will pay for all the atrocities he has committed. The report, of course, talks about also the former Inspector General of Police, Kale Kaihura, who committed gross human rights violations. We shall never forget, because these are serious issues. You've oppressed us for 34 years. History can be made, but it can't be edited. Everything is documented and you will never edit it. Now, the report talks about migrants and refugees. The Minister of Disaster Preparedness and Refugees, Hilary Onek, was once, heard saying that the refugees from Burundi and Rwanda should go back to their home countries. But according to the reports from the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, they were saying that conditions in their home countries were not favorable, so they couldn't go back. And this is a clear message that the government of dictator Kaguta Museveni is only manipulating refugees. They don't want refugees in Uganda. The report talks about the children's rights being abused by this government of Kaguta Museveni. 600 children, including young adults in Kampala, were removed from the streets. They were beaten with sticks and batons as they were forced into the vehicles of law enforcers. Who does that to children? Except dictator Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Now, the report talks about also sexual orientation and gender identity. It talks about how Uganda has a state-sponsored homophobia. There is a crackdown on the LGBTIQ community. This minority group is living in fear because of homophobia. The report gives an incident of a one Brian Wasra, a young gay man who was killed with a hole in his head as he was heading to his home in Ginger. It further talks about the Ethics and Integrity Minister, Lukodo, who had plans of bringing back or reintroducing the anti-homosexuality bill in Parliament. This is inhumane. And the government of Museveni has refused to understand that it's not rocket science to know that all human rights are for all, that we are all born free and equal in rights, in respect, and in dignity. The government of Uganda also has serious cases on issues like prosecutions for serious crimes. Now here they're talking about Dominic Ongwen, Joseph Kony, and Vincent Oti. All were working under the Lord Resistance Army, or LRA, and they committed lots of war crimes. Of course, Ongwen is in the International Criminal Court, and they're still hunting for Joseph Kony and Oti. The report talks about the delayed trial of Jamil Mukulu, who is alleged to be a leader of the ADF, or the Allied Forces. Lastly, the report talks about the key international actors. Very many countries, of course, have been withdrawing or suspending their funds that were aimed at helping the refugee program in our country, Uganda, simply because the government of despot Kaguta Museveni was engaging in fraudulent inflation of the refugee population. They were misusing funds for refugees. This is ridiculous. The report talks about also how many countries from the European Union, or their heads of missions, were coming up with statements about the atrocities that were committed by this regime of dictator Kaguta Museveni. So lots of things have been highlighted in this report, and I encourage all Ugandans to go through this report, to continue exposing the regime of Kaguta Museveni, to continue recording anything that any security force is engaged in which is illegal, or which abuses or infringes on your constitutional rights. We have to document everything, and in the end, all the perpetrators have to be brought to justice. So Ugandans, let's unite. Let's keep fighting until we liberate our motherland, Uganda, from dictatorship. 34 years of repression are enough. And we've evidently seen that Museveni is using repression as a tool to remain in power. But we have to remind him, Uganda is not a monarchy. Uganda is not his family. Uganda will not be run as his business. Museveni has to pave way for a new leader, a visionary leader, to take our country forward. Unless we end the regime of Mr. Museveni, we shall keep sitting on a time bomb as a country. So fellow comrades back home, the time is now to say enough is enough. Museveni must fall. Let's keep united. Let's rise up. Let's speak up. Let our voices be loud and heard in every corner of the country. Keep awakening the mindsets of those Ugandans who do not care about the status quo which is oppressing the majority of Ugandans. And we end this repressive regime of dictator Kaguta Museveni. I am dreaming of a country whereby all Ugandans are having better livelihoods. I dream of a country whereby everyone's rights are respected and promoted. So therefore, Ugandans, where there is injustice, we have to resist and fight to rescue our country. Do not be intimidated. Let's use all peaceful means to end this regime of dictator Kaguta Museveni. We have the numbers. We know what we want. But the question still remains, when are we going to end the regime of Mr. Museveni? So act now, wherever you are. at your workplace, in your home, at your school, in restaurants, in buses, in taxis, in playgrounds, in hospitals, everywhere in Uganda, to ensure that we end the regime of dictator Kaguta Museveni, to rescue our country and liberate our country, to ensure that all Ugandans are living in peace and harmony. Remember, we have the power given to us in Article 1. And Article 3 talks about defense of our constitution. Right now we are sitting on a time bomb. We have to defend our country. Let's fight and claim our country from dictatorship. And we live in the pearl of Africa that Churchill Winston envisioned. Thank you so much. People power, our power.